Hey dudes, it's your buddy Choppadong, and of course I represent DFSArmy.com, one-stop shopping, all things daily fantasy sports. So as usual, you head down into the comments section, you like, you subscribe to the videos, you look at the DFS Army link, you click it, you become a member using the 20% off coupon CHOP, C-H-O-P, and you get in here, and I want to show you why. In a large portion of today, we talked a little bit about cash games with our VIPs, and Fantasy Football Geek really laid out some good info. Now, I can't share the particulars with you. You might actually want to find your way onto our email subscriber list because I think that I'm going to push that out and show you guys exactly how he broke down one of the members' cash game lineups and kind of taught him maybe how to plug some leaks, maybe how to discern where the public is headed and maybe make some better cash game type of decisions going forward. So if you struggle with cash games, you're really going to want to check that out. The main thing that I wanted to show you though was what he also mentioned was about back testing in the domination station. So for those of you that don't know how to do that, it's actually pretty simple. I think that we have a lot of VIPs that maybe don't know how to do that. So I just figured I'd show everybody here in a couple of minutes, and you guys can practice on this on your own. It's basically practice mode with an optimizer. You click on the back test feature. Let's say you wanted to play FanDuel. You go to the NFL. You click open the main slate. You see you've got 2 weeks worth of slates, maybe more in there, but you click on the most recent main slate if that's where you want to start. And when you're selecting cash games, we go through box checkers every week before this information comes out, and then we cross check with how we did. And typically, we're right on top of things early on in the week, and then that makes your building a whole lot easier. You can start thinking about GPP pivots and leverage plays and game stacks, and running it back with certain players that set high usage players, snap counts, et cetera, et cetera. But what I'm trying to show you here specifically is how to select some of those cash game players, because one of the combinations, not the only, but one of the combinations you're going to want to look for in the future is high points per dollar. Fantasy points per dollar based off of projections is a very, very good way to spot that value inside the industry. And value, cash games are about value. If I have a $50,000 salary cap, then if I come out of there with what amounted to $65,000 worth of production, then it was like walking down the grocery store aisles and buying everything on sale. I spent $200 in the grocery store this week, but I came out with $300 worth of groceries. I'm going to eat theoretically longer than you are if you don't buy things on sale and you just go pay full price, or God forbid you overpay and you go in with $200, but you only come out with $165 worth of product because you overpaid for everything. I'm going to come out ahead of you in the long run. I'm going to stretch my dollar further. Stretching your fantasy dollar further is the name of the game, especially in cash games, because we can find those mispriced players across the industry. One of the ways that we do that is coming down into the optimizer itself under all of our categories and taking the fantasy points per dollar column and giving it a click. Now, all of my positions are sorted from top to bottom by fantasy points per dollar. These are all the high value projections, the mispriced players, if you will. And I could start with quarterback. And I could see Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson are scheduled to score a lot of points this week, or last week, because they were in a great matchup playing each other. And the salaries did not necessarily reflect that. These are probably $9,000, $9,500 plays on sale for $8,400 and $8,700 on FanDuel, respectively. And they performed, obviously. Now, one of the things you can do when you're scrolling down this list is start looking for these high price, these high value guys, and start taking, say, the top 3 to 5 or so at every position, and now cross check it. To find those cash players, cross check it with the ownership. If you find a high value play at high ownership, you're going to want him in your cash lineup most often than not. You can take those higher owned players because then they just sort of serve as blocks. I don't care if the guy is a good game or a bad game because most of the people in my 50-50s or my head-to-heads are going to have that player, and that player is now irrelevant. I've removed him from any kind of consequence towards my lineup. And as we go a little bit further down our lineups, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, whatever, we go a little bit further deeper into the more sketchy plays, the ones that are not just obvious, matchups. Then we start making the differences. And if I make those decisions better than you, I'm going to win more often. If I make the decision to buy a player on sale better than you, I'm going to win more often against you. And that's really just the name of the game. I'm going to let everybody else, I'm going to try and take a lot of volume in my head-to-heads or in my 50-50s, play lots and lots and lots and lots of opponents. Instead of playing some 10-man 50-50, I'd rather play 100-man. I'd rather play 1,000-man because the more access I gain to individual lineups, the more or the less I'm going to get screwed by bad luck. I believe I have a skill advantage. I'm going to put that up against your skill advantage. We're going to go head to head. And more times than not, I believe I'm going to win. I believe you're going to trip over your shoelaces by making bad decisions more often than me. And that's going to produce, it's more of a defensive game if you think about it that way. I'm going to just not let you get behind me, and circle the bases or, run to the end zone or whatever metaphor you want to use is. I'm going to just kind of keep you in front of me, let you march down the field. I'm going to bend, but I'm not going to break. I'm going to let you make that fatal mistake. And if we get all the way down to where we have all of the same players except for maybe one or two or three guys, and we're one-on-one or 2 versus 2 or 3 versus 3, then I'm set up to do very, very well if my decisions are better than yours. Now, the other 5 or 6 guys on our roster, we don't care about. We share those guys. I don't care if they score 0. I don't care if they score 5,000 points, because you and I both have that. Where we are different is 1, 2, maybe 3 spots per week, and those are the plays that you're going to help by taking those higher ownership plays, because it's going to produce more of those blocks more often inside your lineup. And then you're not going to worry about taking those leverage pivots. Let the other donkeys do that. The guys that don't understand the fundamentals, that aren't studying, that aren't working on their games like we are, that aren't getting coaching like we are, let those guys jump in there and take that high risk play or that game stack or whatever and put it what should be a tournament lineup into a cash game where he's taking way too much risk for the amount of reward that is offered. Let that guy fall all over himself and you just pick his money up when he falls down on the ground. Does that make sense? That's all we're really trying to do with a cash game. We're not trying to win it. We're not trying to win it. We're just trying to outlast more than half of the people. If we do that, we've done our job. And the way we find that out primarily is fantasy points per dollar, sort that down, and we cross-check it with ownership. Again, as we look at the 3 highest owned quarterbacks on the slate, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson. If I go to a website that will show me the top quarterbacks, this is like Line Star or something like that. So if I come over here and just look, I don't need Justin Herbert. He wasn't very highly owned. I did need Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson to compete. I needed those 2 guys. Deshaun Watson was down here at 24. Might not have killed you in cash games if you made the other correct picks, but you probably you were very, very well set up if you had Kyler Murray. You were okay if you had Russell Wilson. Anybody else was almost a mistake, according to the ownership and the projections. Now, if I come over here and I kick it to running back, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for these guys. These guys are the high owned plays. We've got a high volume, low owned, or not low owned, but a high volume, low priced running back sitting here in Jamal Williams, right? And Gio Bernard. And then Kamara's a pay up if you want him. But these are the guys here, generally speaking, that are supposed to be rather chalky. These are the higher value guys, even Kareem Hunt. These are the guys that should be considered in some cash games. A lot of people probably would have taken a Mike Davis, maybe some Chris Carson. Scroll down a little bit more, maybe we can find some others, but those are the main plays. But these 30% guys are the guys you want to be focused on. So did Jamal Williams have a good day? Gio Bernard, Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt. Let's go look. Running backs. Jamal Williams, 19 points. Kamara, 18.8. Gio Bernard, 18.1. Kareem Hunt, 17.7. See, they performed. Now, not very many people took a Jeff Wilson over you in cash. Some might have, but the general public did not. As far as James Robinson, Todd Gurley, same bit. Those guys were probably fairly low owned. If somebody picked it, fine. They took some risk you didn't take. It worked out for them. If they're willing to play those types of players in cash games, they're probably willing to screw up their receivers. And maybe you made up for it there. Or maybe they're taking risky tight ends, and maybe you made up for it there. But these are the players you're wanting to put in your... If you had most of these guys and they all performed, then you still probably did just fine in your cash games. When I come down here to wide receivers, now watch how volatile this gets. Robbie Anderson, DK Metcalf, we know how he did. Traquan Smith, Devontae Adams, Diggs, Moore, Fuller, whatever. And I come down here, and these are the guys that are kind of highly owned, along with a Tyler Lockett, so that would have been a good pivot. 12%, 17% Keenan Allen, 12%, 12%, 15%. See how this ownership really gets spread out? Even when I come down here, I can still find some guys at some higher level of ownership that are going to be in some of those cash lineups, and they maybe should not be based on fantasy points per dollar. I'm not saying you should have taken Robbie Anderson or Metcalf, I'm saying you should have picked from among these general players. And so when I come down here to wide receivers and I look, Lockett did great, Devontae Adams was up there. Deontay Johnson probably wasn't that highly owned. A.J. Brown probably not that highly owned. DJ Moore, Tyler Boyd, DeAndre Hopkins, Terry McLaurin, Kirk, Allen, Ridley, Beasley, whatever. These guys were a mixture of ownership. And the fact of the matter is, you can gamble here sometimes, right? Because the position itself is relatively volatile. If you're going to ever pivot off of this straight ownership, like you saw DK Metcalf and said, I don't really want to do that. I'd rather go somewhere else, over to Lockett. It's more of a slot receiver game, not a deep threat type of game. So Lockett's going to get more targets. If you were sharp enough to pick up on that and make that play, you got him a little bit lower ownership. It doesn't really matter. He's still fairly owned, but it doesn't really matter because wide receiver is so volatile that oftentimes the chalk in that position is going to fail more frequently than at running back or quarterback. So if you're going to ever get off the chalk a little bit, that would be the place to do it. Tight end would be another spot. So if we look at the tight ends, Kelsey, Kittle, Henry, Jared Cook, Hawkinson at 11%. Cook was lower owned. So if we're cross-checking with ownership, Cook would not have made the list. It would be Kelsey, Kittle, Henry, Hawkinson, right? So when I come over here to tight ends and take a look, Bryant, Hawkinson's up there. There's Cook, Thomas, Cook, Hurst. Where's Kittle? Way down here. And if Kelsey was even on the main slate, then, this is the idea. This is where these guys are going to land. Again, a volatile position. But if we come over even to defense, Bills, Saints, Cowboys, Washington football team. Really, it's the Bills and Washington and maybe the Chiefs. See the ownership indicators there? When I come over here to the defenses, who's up there? Washington, Kansas City, and the Bills. You see how this works for cash games? You see how this starts to work? Now, it worked out pretty well this week because a lot of the chalkier players had good games. But this is a very, very good way to go through and pick your cash game players. And it's also a very good thing to do on Monday mornings when you go back through and cross-check yourself and see if you are selecting the right types of players for the format that you're using. And when you are going head-to-head and you look at a lineup of a guy that you played that beat you, and you find a game stack of 3 players or 4 players, or you find some kind of a crazy random wide receiver that went off at very, very low ownership, don't beat yourself up over that too much. Instead, take a look at that and say, that guy actually got rewarded for doing it wrong. That's going to happen. If I play poker with my kids and I've got pocket aces, my pocket aces are going to get beat sometimes. But if I got all the chips in the middle before the flop came out with those pocket aces, then we just kind of let luck play out from there. More times than not, I'm going to have my kids M&Ms. So if you play those chalky players at high value, more times than not, you're going to have that donkey's money. This is the type of coaching we offer inside DFSArmy.com. This is any sport, MMA, PGA, NBA, it doesn't really matter what sport you play. If you come inside today, we can help you out for tonight's games. I'm just having a little fun with rhyming there, but we can have a lot of stuff to unload onto you in the next week or 2 or 3. Probably turn your game around, make you a better player. But the only way you're going to do that, take a leap of faith on your own game, on yourself, and jump in here today. DFSArmy.com, coupon code CHOP, CHOP. Like and subscribe to the video while you're down there. And hopefully I see you in there tonight asking our coaches tons of questions. Take care, guys. We'll talk to you soon.